A king without control is not powerful. He's exposed. He may have status, money, influence. But if he can't command his own mind, his words, his impulses, then everything he owns is controlling him instead. One moment of anger, one careless decision, one lack of discipline, and the crown starts to slip. That's how power is lost from the inside, not the outside. Most people chase authority over others while remaining slaves to themselves, slaves to emotion, to distraction, to desire. But real power is built differently. It starts within, where every thought is governed, every action is deliberate, every impulse is mastered. Because if you can't rule yourself, nothing you rule will ever truly belong to you. And the terrifying part? Most men don't even know this is happening to them. They're walking around with ambition in their eyes and chaos in their soul. They want respect, but they haven't learned how to respect their own boundaries. They want loyalty, but they can't stay loyal to their own word. They want a life that feels like theirs, but every morning they wake up and let the world decide who they're going to be that day. That's not living, that's surrendering. There's a reason Epictetus, a man who was literally born a slave, beaten, broken, owned by another human being, became one of the most powerful philosophical minds in all of history. He had nothing, not freedom, not status, not even his own body, but he had something that his master could never touch. He said, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." A slave who mastered his inner world became freer than the emperor who enslaved him. That's not philosophy. That's war strategy for the human soul. Because here's what no one says out loud. The most dangerous prison a man can live in has no bars, no walls, no guards. It's built from unexamined habits, from swallowed fears that turned into invisible rules, from the version of yourself you accepted because someone told you that's all you were. You didn't lose your power in one dramatic moment. You gave it away quietly, piece by piece, reaction by reaction, silence by silence. You said yes when your gut screamed no. You stayed when everything in you said leave. You kept performing for people who were never even watching. And slowly, without realizing it, you became the audience of your own life instead of the one directing it. This is not about becoming cold or emotionless. This is about becoming the one who decides, the one who pauses before he speaks, the one who chooses his battles not from impulse, but from strategy, the one who looks at chaos and doesn't flinch because he's already conquered the chaos inside himself first. That man is rare. That man is dangerous in the best way possible. And that man starts here. Drop in the comments, "I am the ruler." Now let's get into it. Point number 1. Your emotions are not your identity, they're your test. You ever said something in anger and spent days wishing you could take it back? You ever made a decision from a place of fear and watched it quietly destroy something you actually cared about? You ever reacted so fast, so automatically, that by the time your mind caught up, the damage was already done? That's not weakness. That's what happens when a man has never been taught the difference between feeling an emotion and being ruled by one. Every human being feels anger. Every human being feels pain, jealousy, fear, loneliness. These are not character flaws. They are signals. The problem is that most people treat signals like commands. The emotion arrives, and they obey it immediately, completely, without question. Like a puppet whose strings are being pulled by whatever mood walked in that morning. The Stoics had a specific word for this moment, the split second between what happens to you and how you respond. They called it the prohairesis, your faculty of choice. Marcus Aurelius built his entire reign around protecting that space, not suppressing what he felt. but refusing to let what he felt make decisions on his behalf. He wrote to himself, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Most people have never even realized that space exists. They've been living on autopilot, letting their history decide their reactions, letting their wounds write their responses, letting their worst days define their default setting. But when you start to own that space, when you pause, breathe, and choose, something shifts permanently. People notice you don't scramble when things fall apart. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. You don't chase, beg, or collapse under pressure. Not because you feel nothing, but because you've made a decision that your emotions will inform you, not govern you. That kind of self-possession is so rare that people mistake it for arrogance. It's not. It's discipline at its deepest level. It's a man who has looked at his own darkness, sat with it, understood it, and refused to let it drive. Your emotions are not your enemy, but they are not your king either. You are. Point number 2. The man who can't say no is already owned. Nobody talks about this one, but it's silently destroying more men than failure ever could. You know the man who can never say no. Maybe you've seen him. Maybe you are him. The one who overcommits and underdelivers, not because he's lazy, but because he's terrified of what people will think if he sets a boundary. The one who stays in conversations that drain him, relationships that diminish him, environments that slowly suffocate everything he's trying to become. He keeps saying yes to everyone else, while quietly saying no to himself every single day, and he wonders why he feels empty. Here's the psychology behind it that nobody explains properly. When a man cannot say no, it's never really about being kind or generous. It's about fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of being seen as difficult. Fear of losing approval from people whose approval was never even feeding him. He has outsourced his self-worth to the reactions of other people. And now he is permanently at the mercy of whoever needs something from him. That is not generosity. That is self-abandonment dressed up as virtue. Seneca saw this pattern with devastating clarity. He wrote, "It is not that I am brave enough to say no, it is that I value my time enough to protect it." A man who cannot protect his own time, energy, and peace cannot protect anything else either. His yes means nothing because it was never a choice. It was a surrender. The most powerful shift a man can make is the moment he realizes that every yes to something that doesn't align with who he is becoming is a no to himself. Every time you stay silent when you should speak, every time you show up for people who would never show up for you, every time you reshape yourself to fit into spaces that were never built for you, you are paying a price. And the currency you're spending is your own identity. Real strength is not how much you carry for others. Real strength is knowing exactly what deserves your energy and having the self-respect to give nothing to what doesn't. A man who masters his no masters his life, because finally, every yes he gives actually means something, and so does he. Point number 3. Discipline is not punishment. It's the only real freedom you'll ever have. Most people hear the word discipline and immediately feel resistance, like it's something imposed on them, like it's a cage, like somewhere along the way they were taught that freedom means doing whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want. And discipline is the opposite of that. But that's exactly backwards. The man with no discipline is not free. He is completely owned by his cravings, owned by his comfort zone, owned by the version of himself that was built by circumstance rather than choice. He sleeps when he should rise. He escapes when he should face. He numbs when he should feel. He drifts and calls it living. He avoids and calls it peace. He stays exactly where he is and calls it patience. Meanwhile, life is passing, and somewhere deep inside him, he knows it. There is a particular kind of pain that comes not from working too hard, but from knowing you are capable of more and choosing less every single day. That quiet ache at night when the noise dies down and you're alone with yourself, and the gap between who you are and who you know you could be becomes impossible to ignore. That's not anxiety. That's your potential knocking on a door you keep pretending not to hear. Epictetus said something that cuts straight through every excuse a man has ever made. No man is free who is not master of himself, not master of his circumstances, not master of other people, master of himself, his habits, his hours, his hunger for what actually matters. Discipline is not about punishing yourself into greatness. It's about making a daily decision that your future self deserves better than your present comfort. It's about building a relationship with yourself where you actually keep your own promises, where you say you'll rise and you rise, where you say you'll build and you build, where you say you'll stop and you stop. Because when a man can trust himself, truly trust himself, something unbreakable forms in his character. He stops needing external validation because he has internal proof. He has shown up for himself so consistently that doubt no longer gets a seat at the table. That's not discipline, that's sovereignty. And sovereignty is the only freedom worth fighting for. Point number 4. The wound you never faced is the one running your life. This is the one most men skip. They'll train their body, they'll build their finances, they'll read every book on strategy, discipline, and power, but they will not go here. Because going here means admitting that somewhere beneath all the ambition, all the hustle, all the carefully constructed image, there is a wound that never healed. And that wound has been making decisions on their behalf for years. Think about it honestly. The reason some men can't receive love without suspicion is not because love is dangerous. It's because someone they trusted made it feel that way. The reason some men explode over small things is not because the small thing mattered. It's because it touched something buried that was never allowed to matter. The reason some men self-sabotage every time they get close to something real, a relationship, an opportunity, a version of themselves they actually respect, is not bad luck. It's a subconscious belief planted early, watered by pain that says, "You don't deserve to keep good things." That's not destiny. That's an unexamined wound operating as a life philosophy. Carl Jung, one of the deepest minds ever to study human psychology, said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Read that slowly. The things you haven't faced don't disappear. They go underground. They disguise themselves as personality traits, as preferences, as patterns. And then you spend your entire life wondering why you keep ending up in the same situations, the same cycles, the same pain wearing different faces. The most courageous thing a man can do is not climb a mountain or build an empire. It's sitting alone in silence and asking himself, with complete honesty, where did I learn to be this way? What am I still carrying that was never mine to carry? What version of myself am I still protecting that I should have outgrown years ago? Because when you face the wound, really face it, not suppress it, not perform over it, it loses its power over you. It stops being the invisible hand steering your choices from the dark. You take the wheel back, and for the first time in a long time, the man moving through the world is actually you. Not your pain, not your past, not someone else's unresolved story living inside your body. You. Point number 5. A man who conquers himself has already won the hardest war. Every man has a version of himself he's fighting against. Not an enemy outside, not a competitor, not circumstance or bad timing, or the people who doubted him. The real opponent is internal. It's the version of you that wants to quit 5 minutes before the breakthrough. The version that whispers, "You're not ready yet." The version that has watched you fail before and uses that memory as a weapon every single time you try to rise again. That internal opponent is relentless. It knows every weakness because it lives inside the same skin you do. It knows what scares you, what broke you, what almost destroyed you. And it uses all of it, strategically, quietly, constantly, to keep you exactly where you are. Most men never name this enemy, so they never defeat it. They just live in a permanent low-grade war with themselves, exhausted without knowing why, stuck without understanding how, achieving things on the outside while feeling hollow on the inside. Because the external victories mean nothing if the internal battle is still being lost every morning when you wake up and choose comfort over commitment, noise over clarity, performance over truth. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire and fought wars across 3 continents. But the journal he left behind, what we now call meditations, was never written for the public. It was written for himself. Every single entry was a man holding himself accountable, reminding himself to be patient, to be just, to not be seduced by flattery or destroyed by criticism. The most powerful man on earth was in a daily private war with his own ego, his own impulses, his own capacity for weakness. And he showed up to that war every single morning without applause, without an audience, without anyone watching. That's what real conquest looks like. Not a trophy, not a title. A man alone with himself, choosing again and again to be better than his worst impulse. When you conquer yourself, you stop being reactive and start being intentional. You stop shrinking in rooms where you should stand tall. You stop apologizing for your standards. You stop waiting for someone to give you permission to become who you already know you are. The noise of the world stops being able to locate you because you are so deeply anchored in yourself that nothing external can move what is internally rooted. This is what the Stoics built their entire philosophy around. Not escaping life, not avoiding pain, but becoming so internally sovereign that nothing life throws can strip you of your dignity, your direction, or your identity. You were never meant to be managed by the world. You were meant to move through it with intention, with power, with complete ownership of every step you take. That is not arrogance. That is a man who finally came home to himself. Everything we've walked through in this video comes down to one single truth that most people spend their entire lives running from. You are not losing because the world is against you. You are not stuck because opportunity hasn't arrived. You are not empty because life has been unfair. You're exactly where your level of self-mastery has placed you. And the moment that stops feeling like an accusation and starts feeling like the most empowering thing you've ever heard, everything changes. Because if your inner world created this reality, then your inner world can rebuild it entirely. The Stoics didn't teach self-mastery as a philosophy. They lived it as survival. In a world of chaos, corruption, and collapse, the only thing that remained sacred was the man who could govern himself. His mind was his kingdom, His discipline was his army, his values were his constitution, and nobody, no emperor, no circumstance, no catastrophe, could invade what was built that deeply. That is what you are being called to build, not a perfect life. Not a life without pain or failure or seasons of darkness, but a life where you are always the one holding the reins, where your reactions are chosen, where your direction is owned, where your identity is not borrowed from other people's opinions or written by your worst experiences. A king without control is a slave, but a man who masters himself, truly masters himself, is free in a way that no amount of money, status, or power could ever manufacture. You already know what needs to change. You've known for a while. The only question left is whether you'll finally stop negotiating with the version of you that's been keeping you small. Rise, rule yourself, and let everything else follow. Drop in the comments, "I rule myself,"